Hey, look! Superman!
Hello, my trigger-happy friends. My name is Stevie Cade, and thank you for joining me as I continue my review series of all the live-action Superman movies. And I am doing this along with my Batman live-action Superman series that will lead up to Batman v Superman. Before we get started, if you could, hit that subscribe button and the little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Grab your keyboards, head down to the comment section, and let's review Superman 3. In this movie, we find Superman back in his hometown of Smallville. Meanwhile, a new financial tycoon by the name of Ross Webster has taken control of a weather satellite and is wreaking havoc. This is the Superman movie that I grew up with. As a matter of fact, it came out the year I was born. It was the one I always watched. And in doing this review, there was so much nostalgic aspects of it. And I knew that was going to happen because this was my favorite Superman. So diving back into it with more of a critique-looking eye, I'm actually quite surprised with my reaction to it. So let's jump into what I like about this film. From the get-go, you know exactly what this movie is going to be. It starts off a little bit more campier. It doesn't have that same super cinematic opening that the previous two films did, and does this weird butterfly effect, mousetrap, slapstick gimmicky thing. When I was first watching it, I didn't really like that. I was like, oh, great, this is the kind of movie we're gonna get. And yeah, it is, and it let me know that from the get-go. And as the movie continued, I actually enjoyed that they let me know that. They didn't catfish me into thinking I was getting one thing, and then I actually got something else. Richard Lester has a certain style. This movie is 100% his, and not a Frankenstein chopped up version like the previous two films were because of studio involvement, which makes this movie to be better paced and very well balanced. The lab created tar-infused kryptonite, causing Superman to turn into dark, brooding Superman, or just a dick. He just becomes a dick in this movie. When do we get to see Superman be a dick? Not very often. I know they did it in The Adventures of Lois and Clark. I think when he had the red kryptonite thing happen to him. I think it's a great way to bring back in the kryptonite element without doing a copy and paste rehashing of the same kryptonite storyline we've seen before. I really enjoyed revisiting Smallville. It took Clark Kent out of this big congested city and put him in a situation where he becomes a more relatable character for a lot of people. But I did happen to notice he didn't visit his mother once, Clark. Plus, him being in Smallville brought us Lana Lane. Oh, Lana Lane. We'll talk more about you in a minute. Seriously though, where's Clark's mom? Set designs. The set designs in this film are an obvious result of the success of the previous two films, but I think they did a great job being creative with them. Like Ross Webster's penthouse, it has a lot of hidden secrets, like the spinny bar thing, or when the water fountain flips upside down, reveals this electric map, which he has another one. Like, how many electric maps do you need, honestly? But either way, I really like the set design of that. But also in the third act, we're faced with that supercomputer. It's a bit over the top, but again, it's supposed to be over the top. A lot of this movie is over the top and very consistent, and I really dig the kind of Frankenstein vibes that third act gave us. And the set design, again, was just very beautifully done, very attractive to the eye. Lex Luthor and Lois Lane do not appear in this movie. Well, Lois Lane does for like a second, and then they send her to Bermuda for the whole film. Thank God. And I really enjoyed that because if you guys have been watching my review series, Lois Lane and Lex Luthor are my two most hated characters in this franchise. Like, I don't get why people love them so much. So yes, I was very happy to see them not in this movie. Lana Lane is my new crush. She is perfect for Clark. And up until I watched this movie, I always thought her name was Lana Lane. And I thought she was related to Lois. I've been getting that wrong for almost 40 years. She's not a self-absorbed, story-hungry woman who only likes Superman because, you know, he's Superman. As a matter of fact, Lana Lang likes Clark Kent, not Superman. Well, I mean, she likes Superman, but not the way that she likes Clark Kent. She would prefer Clark Kent over Superman, which is something I've always thought Lois in this franchise failed at.
Lois, say hello to Lana Lang, Smallville's newest gift to Metropolis.
I like your sparkler a lot.
Me too. I couldn't believe it when Clark gave it to me.
And Annette O'Toole gives a very genuine performance. Like, she seems like somebody that I wouldn't mind dating. She seems loving and caring, and she's just doing the best with what she has. And as a matter of fact, she went on to play Martha Kent in the show Smallville, which I've never seen. Well, I mean, I've seen like 1, maybe 2 episodes. I know my friend Durbin over at Durbania will probably smack me for that. But hey, Maybe I can do a TV series review. Probably not. But Lana, you are way better than Lois, and I think you and Clark would have a very happy, long life together. And of course, Christopher Reeve, again, is on my list of what I like. I can't really tell you more about what I like about him than what I have in the 2 previous reviews. There's really not much else to say. He's very consistent in his role of being the fun, happy Superman. And now in this movie, we get to see another side of him, which is cool, and I think he did a really good job at, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. But Christopher Reeve did quit playing Superman after the studio treated Richard Donner the way they did, and Richard Lester had to beg him to come back after the studio settled on Tony Danza to take his place. Ooh, could you imagine Tony Danza playing Superman? Hey Lana, you want to go like for a fly or something? You want to go fly? You want to go fly? You want to go? Okay, we're just gonna move on past that. Richard Pryor, I think his character as Gus Gorman was a very well-needed character. He replaced that Ned Beatty comedic relief sort of role, but he also had a bigger part to play. And his performance lands for me. I genuinely laughed every time he cracked a joke or just acted like Richard Pryor. I'm also a huge Richard Pryor fan to begin with, so a little bias on that one, but that's what this channel is, right? It's my bias of what I like. So, yeah, Richard Pryor. But when it comes to the actual character of Gus Gordon, I think that could have been handled a little bit better, and that's what's going to lead us into what I'm on the fence about. I'm not exactly sure what Gus Gorman's arc is supposed to be. First, he's a guy who's just down on his luck and needing a job, and then all of a sudden he's a computer whiz because just pressing buttons seems to make you a computer whiz now. So at this point in the movie, he seems like the genius who might be the main villain of the film, which I thought would be a really cool role for him. But no, we get not Lex Luthor as the main villain. Like, literally, you could tell this role was written for Gene Hackman, who refused to come back for this movie, also because of the way Richard Donner was treated. Anyhow, after Ross Webster is introduced, Gus Gorman more becomes the slapstick comedy of the movie.
And we just get good old Gus to contact the Vulcan satellite.
Old Gus has been doing some thinking.
Good. That's why I keep you around.
And his character doesn't develop in the way that I would expect him to. He just kind of falls into the background and then just eventually just disappears at the end of the movie, never to be seen again.
9 or 10 miles? Think I'll walk. I don't want to. Yeah, I'll walk. Yeah.
They had so much potential if they would have made him the actual main villain. Like, one of those main villains who accidentally becomes the main villain. Like, he's just trying to make life easier for himself by doing this, that, the other, makes a few missteps, ends up being the bad guy, and ultimately realizes his mistake by the end of the movie, kind of pays the price for it in one way or another, but learns his lesson, and still turns out to be almost the heart of the film. I think that would have been a perfect story arc for Gus Gorman, and I think Richard Pryor could have played it off as an actual main villain instead of just washing away as a side character. The evil corporate guy and his bimbo arm candy, Ross Webster and Lorelei. Again, obvious replacements for Lex Luthor and Miss Tashmaker. I'm on the fence with these two characters because I actually liked them better than Lex Luthor and Mrs. Tashmaker. I enjoyed watching them more. They weren't annoying. I didn't have any high expectations of what Lex Luthor was supposed to be, and ultimately get completely disappointed by it because Gene Hackman just does nothing but yell at people, talk about how much of a genius he is. I don't know. Maybe my expectations were lowered because they weren't playing those characters, and that's why I liked them better. But again, I'm on the fence with them because they are such a copy and paste of what Lex Luthor and Mrs. Tashmaker originally were. It's like right on the nose. Again, you can tell they originally had Lex Luthor and Mrs. Tashmaker scripted for these roles, and when Gene Hackman refused to come back, they just changed the names. And it's very obvious that's what they did. Like I said before, though, they could have gotten rid of these characters and built up Gus Gorman more as the main villain, and I would have liked that better. I think it would have went smoother, but we got what we got, and it wasn't too bad. Superman versus Clark Kent. As a result of a lab-made tar-infused kryptonite, which is an obvious product placement for cigarettes, way to go, Superman movie, we get a battle of good versus evil. Like a literal Superman splits into two and fights himself, which is, it's okay. It's a good storyline, and it ends up being a great scene. And just a little side note, I happen to notice that Superman's the evil Superman, his outfit is almost the same as that color scheme as it is in Superman Returns. Does that make Superman Returns Superman the evil one? Who really survived this battle? But I feel like this internal battle could have been hashed out a little bit more throughout the movie. We see Superman becoming bad, but we don't really see him fighting with himself until this one scene where it becomes a literal, he's fighting himself. And for the longest time, I wasn't even sure if it was supposed to be a physical fight with himself or just an internal battle that was just being illustrated for us for an audience. Now that I did some research, I realized that the kryptonite story, they have the gold kryptonite and the red kryptonite where it actually separates him into two beings. So I think that's the route they were going. So it is supposed to be physical, and I'm just ranting on about nonsense that everybody knows now. Way to catch up, Steve. Ultimately, though, I think they could have explained the power of the kryptonite a little bit better, that it was actually doing that to him. But it doesn't take me away from the movie. Like, what we got was pretty okay, and this is just me trying to dive deeper into it, and it ended up being a very entertaining storyline to watch. Now, moving right along with what I don't like about this film. Even though I found the overall pacing to be very balanced, the story itself is just full of plot conveniences, and to help move the story forward by Superman doing Superman-y things. For example, like the fire at the chemical plant. Boy, if only there was somebody with super powerful ice breath that could just blow this fire right out. Or just freeze a lake and fly that over and drop it on everybody. Those poor fish. Could you imagine? It would just be raining fish all over everybody. Probably frozen fish. It's raining fish! Hallelujah, it's raining fish! Okay, I need to stop doing the music montages in these Superman videos. But for real though, this situation went from what could have been a very heroic Superman saving everybody scene to a let's just see what Superman can do because Superman can do it type of thing. Another example of plot conveniences just to move the story forward is, well, how do I say this? As Superman, when somebody without any credentials claims to be from the government and hands you a rock that looks suspiciously a lot like kryptonite, you should probably investigate the situation a little further. Just saying. But nope, he just accepts it, sits down, and lets the movie continue on as quickly as possible. We gotta keep this movie going! Or at the end of this movie when Webster's sister Vera randomly claims that she knows so much about computers it would put a PhD to shame. Well, that would have been a good thing to know this entire time, and also completely negates Gus Gorman as a character. If she was so smart at computers, why didn't she just do this whole thing herself? What was the point in having Gus there? But again, they threw away his character, and this is more proof of that. They had him riding this fucking donkey down a mountain, so in order to get the movie forward, oh, now she knows how to run the computers. And it does put Gus Gorman in like a moral situation, because he didn't have control of it. He's not the one who actually pushed the buttons to hurt Superman. But still. Oh, and also Lorelei happens to be randomly smart by the end of this movie too, because why the fuck not? The whole third act of this movie becomes very unhinged, just a hot mess. It literally becomes a Frankenstein movie. And again, I kind of like that part, but fuck, it's random. Now I have some petty points, which this is a section of my review series that's becoming a section, I think. I think I might actually make this a section officially, give it its own little card or something. I don't know, maybe not. But here are some petty points I have with this movie that are things that I just didn't like. I'm just being petty. If your company is missing $85,000 and you suspect it's an inside job, maybe you should start looking at the employee who just cashed a check for $85,000. Might be a good place to start. Not even your computer genius sister Vera could figure that one out. Clark Kent, your glasses are crooked through most of this movie. Fix them. Like, the whole time I'm watching it, like, I'm just, sure thing, Lana. Yeah, okay, let's go on a picnic, Lana. Like, I just want to fix your fucking glasses. I don't know if it's a camera angle issue, but it really bugged me during this whole movie because I'm a very symmetrical type of guy. Richard Lester has a weird obsession with plastic traps. Making it known that your satellite has lasers means you can do anything, apparently. Need to change the weather? Use the lasers. Need to find compounds to make kryptonite? Use the lasers. But will it work? Of course, it's science. Overall, this was the movie that Richard Lester and Warner Brothers both wanted to make. They got rid of the rich, deep storytelling and let Richard Lester make a fun family movie that doesn't dive too deep into the grit. And because of that, you had a much more decent, consistent flow. I genuinely had a good time watching this movie, and that might be for the nostalgia aspect of it, or the fact that Lex Luthor and Lois Lane weren't in this movie to ruin it for me. Or maybe it's because I can shut my brain down and just enjoy a good Superman movie. The over-the-top Superman stuff and the pretty decent comedy this movie had pretty much made up for all the major downfalls I had with this film, and for these reasons, I'm giving this movie a B-.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great!
Well, it was pretty good.
Yeah, this movie got the best grade out of all the Superman movies. I was really surprised. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some more of my videos. And as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.
Looks really pretty.
Brad.
Brad. Son of a bitch.